I believe that it is very safe to say that in recent memory being the last decade or so, survival horror has become one of, if not the, most popular genre among indie games. 32-bit, 90s style, low polygon, fixed camera angles, tank control survival horror, to be specific. One specific game gets mentioned a lot, one of which that was sort of the flag bearer or forefront leaders for Humble Games publishing. Yeah, I'm talking about Signalis. But are those silly little German robots really that good? All they're cracked out to be? Is it the best survival horror indie game out currently? Hell, is it better than Resident Evil and Silent Hill? The games that fathered its entire existence? Let's talk about it. Released on October 27th, 2022, on practically everything, including Humble's ill-fated dedicated launcher, Signalis, developed by Rose Engine, which was essentially a two-person team, follows the journey of Elster, a replica or android who wakes up to fulfill a promise. What is that promise? Your guess is as good as mine because this game is purposely and methodically confusing. The game starts with you exiting a chamber or pod upon an aircraft that has crash landed. Upon leaving said crash landed aircraft, you wander around the snow until finding a big ass hole. Y'all remember that Deftones song? It's too late for me now. There's a hole in the earth. I'm out. Inside the hole is another hole, which you crawl into. After picking up a book, the creepiest relay message starts to automatically play, and everything turns to shit. Moral of the story? Say no to books, kids. Stay illiterate. The game then cuts to you in a bathroom, with Elster saying they've come all the way here for a reason. Now, in a completely different facility, you stumble upon another replica, who apparently got her ass beat. She immediately tells you to take your sorry ass out of here, but Elster ignores this and shows a picture, saying they're searching for the person in the photograph. The wounded replica says, "Try the mines." And that is the gist of our story. Very Silent Hill-like, huh? What is the promise? To find a person in the photo? To do something with, or for, or to the person in the photo? Are we seeking the person in the photo to be told what the promise was? What are we waking up from? And many more questions will arise as you embark on your quest, which brings us to our first category in the review. The story. The narrative. Weird horror. Cosmic horror. Body horror. Sci-fi. Military. Politics. Individuality. Love. The definition of the self. Imposter syndrome. And all of that jazz are prevalent themes in this game's story. This game is very philosophical and psychological. I mean, the very first piece of literature we come across is The King in Yellow. That alone should tell you what timing this game will be on. This game takes inspiration from so many things such as Silent Hill, Ghost in the Shell, and Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'd argue that Warhammer 40k and Monogatari is in there too, and of course a slew of other things I'm completely ignorant to. Signalis also reminds me of another indie game called Icy. I will not explain why, for spoiler reasons. If the aforementioned themes, genres, and ideas are up your alley, then boy oh boy, you have the Emperor's blessing to give this a go. However, if you do not like stories that are purposely confusing, purposely told out of order, and you're one of those people who have an aneurysm at the mention of Yuri, then take this video off and exit stage left. Signalis presents a type of story that demands your attention and brain power to piece together. The graphics, art direction, and presentation is what personally drew my attention to Signalis, as is usually the case with most games I've reviewed on this channel. The 2D art reminds me of 80s and 90s Japanese cyberpunk, as if it would fit right in with the OVAs of that time period. The 3D models remind me of how the Game Boy Advance achieved Mode 7-like graphics, which in this specific case is a good thing in my book. The screen occasionally flickering like old CRT monitors used to, the frequency and severity increasing the more damage you take. And as per tradition, this horror game has a cool main menu. Yeah, you follow that cursor with your eye, Elster. Music and sound is also superb in this game. Rose Engine did a fantastic job to set the tone and atmosphere of the game and its setting. They especially went a ridiculous length to remind you that you're playing as a robo waifu. Punchy, crunchy, clicky keycaps and that ASMR-like click and clatter of IDE drives working. The use of ordinary sounds but altered to give you that creepy and uncanny feeling, Silent Hill style. And the oh so sudden reminder that the piano is one of the greatest musical instruments ever created. Sound is easily one of those categories that separates the good from the great, and Signalis is one of those games that has marvelous sound across the board. The big elephant in the room is the gameplay. No matter how good a game sounds, or how nice the soundtrack is, or how pretty its graphics are, at the end of the day, it needs to be fun to play, fun to interact with. Signalis is not only fun, but it's accessible too. Sadly, even the Yuri robots and their German language cannot escape some flaws. Signalis gives you the choice of playing with or without tank controls. You can change how difficult the combat is. You can change how the inventory system works. You can take automatic reloading on or off, and so on and so forth. The Emperor is not a punk, so naturally I played with tank controls and classic inventory management. The Emperor is not a masochist, however. I played with normal combat difficulty, not survival mode. Tank controls are tank controls. You're either an adult and like them, or a snot-nosed child who doesn't know any better. You can use either the left stick or the D-pad, but the game will kinda force you to use the left stick. Why do I say that? Because when aiming, you can aim, strafe, and move forward or backward. However, you can only do this with the left and right stick. Trying to constantly switch between the D-pad when walking and thumbsticks for aiming isn't intuitive, so it's best to use the sticks throughout the entire thing. Assuming you're playing with a controller to begin with, it's keyboard and mouse compatible as well. Here's where the single biggest issue with the game comes in. If you collide with any of the environment, all of your movement immediately stops and you cannot move forward. This, by far, is the single most baffling thing about the game, to the point where I wouldn't blame anyone for dropping it because of this. In other games that use tank controls, you can walk forward into walls and even slide against walls while doing so. This helps tremendously with positioning and escaping the constant game of chase you'll be playing with enemies that want you dead. So, obviously, this is not a good thing here. It feels awkward, can make things cumbersome, and in the most extreme cases, cause deaths. The majority of the damage I've taken came from this. No idea if Elster has hips that put the Grand Empress to shame, but I swear, there was times when I was colliding with stuff that I don't think I should have, as if a fat robo thighs expanded her hitbox. Aiming has a red dot sight and shows a red box when you are successfully locked onto a target. Normal movement is slow, and holding the sprint button causes Elster to move faster. Very good quality of life features here. The puzzles are really cool too. Replicas can tune into radio frequency, and some puzzles and enemy types use this mechanic. Tuning my own body to pick up audio is the rawest thing ever to me. Again, Rose Engine does an amazing job to help sell the "you are a damn robot" notion. I also did not need to look up a FAQ once with any puzzle in the game. They are relatively straightforward, but not overly complex, which may or may not be a good thing, depending on the type of person you are. If you're the type of puzzler who only wants rocket science, bust out a pen, paper, and dictionary, then you may find the puzzles in this game too easy. But everyone else, I think you'll find the puzzles in this game have a good balance of "think idiot" and "here's a hint to help think idiot." There are instances where the game switches to first person and you get a cursor to interact with things, turning into a pseudo adventure game. You will never have to pixel hunt for anything, hence the pseudo adventure, so it's more so just for presentation, but I still like this a lot. Signalis is more Resident Evil 1 in terms of pacing, and by that I mean the game is a slow burn. You will spend the majority of your time slowly walking through corridors and rooms as you solve puzzles to proceed and read various writings to piece together what's going on and the lore of the game. Playing with the classic inventory setting especially had me running back and forth to pick up one thing, then go store it. Of course, all of that is a good thing. Ample time to yourself means ample time to get into your own head. Ample time in your own head means ample time to get scared of your own shadow, while the ever-present atmosphere, doom and dread of your situation seeps into your pores. That is, until you get to the final portion of the game, and it suddenly turns into a muso. The nightmare isn't free of criticism though. Signalis still has flaws, most of which are probably personal to me, but others I think universally affect everyone. We've already spoke about the biggest one, literally. Elster apparently having the biggest hips the Yuuzhan Empire and nation have ever seen, which causes her movement to completely stop if colliding with the geometry. But there is one more movement-based issue. Also, I really hope I pronounced Yuuzhan correctly. I apologize. As you've noticed by now, this game uses fixed camera angle, singular, and not fixed camera angles, plural. Basically, it's an isometric game. Because of this, some spaces of the screen will be obscured or flat out off screen. You can still walk into these areas, completely hiding Elster from sight. An arrow appears that shows you where you're standing. Sometimes. It doesn't show you which direction you're facing, on top of being highly inconsistent. This arrow doesn't always appear when you walk out of sight either. There was a couple of times I got stuck being off camera and struggling to get back into camera. Comboed with the aforementioned movement halted upon collision thing? Yeah, not a good time. Combat is okay. Most people, especially for Silent Hill, will argue that these types of games don't have good combat to begin with. So in a funny twist of irony, Signalis managed to even get that part right of this subgenre. What my actual point is, I don't think the combat was made for fighting more than 2 enemies at a time. End of the game will have you in rooms with hordes of them. There's a cool feature where while you're aiming and if you press the fire button with an enemy in your grill, Elster will push them back, creating space. Very good thing, but I felt like the second I tried to do really fast inputs, the game became unresponsive. Juke around this pillar, aim, fire at the enemy in front, quick turn and do it again to the enemy behind you. But Elster will get stuck somewhere along that sequence, thus costing me hits. Another quality of life feature is that most of the things that can be interacted with will have a bracket highlighted over it upon getting close enough. But you can still interact with things that don't get this highlight. It's primarily just descriptions and exposition, but I still feel like it can cause a bit of confusion. The classic argument of 3D objects on top of pre-rendered 2D backgrounds comes into play here. Everything is 3D, so it can make some items missable. Roll's engine did a good job in designing the resources so they stood out naturally, but the point still stands. I somehow entirely missed a grenade launcher and sometimes missed a resource item in a room. At least I think there's a grenade launcher with how much ammo I picked up for it. The rest of what I have to say is personal, but maybe some theater going witches can relate. I know next to nothing of the German language or its culture, outside of the times in anime where they'll say ein, zwei, and drei, counting to 3 like it's Sesame Street. So I sort of had a hard time keeping track of names and places. I also felt a bit of same face syndrome was going on. Now, I know what y'all are thinking. Emperor, isn't Saber your top 1 waifu, yet you have the audacity to complain about same face syndrome? Fire for that. Yes, I am a big fan of Takashi Takeuchi sensei's art. I just found myself struggling to differentiate between characters sometimes. Luckily though, as if Roll's engine was aware of this fact, the end of the game straight up tells you what's important, which helps a lot. Not everything though. You're still required to piece together stuff, but for the framework or baseline of the story, you get some well-needed A equals B. There are multiple endings in the game. This is never a bad thing. The bad thing, however, is it seems like nobody is quite sure what the requirements are. You can find users arguing of inaccuracies under guides. Naturally, I didn't bother with none of that and watched the other endings on YouTube. I got the promise ending on my playthrough. After all of that jibba jabba, we can discuss the title of the video. Is Signalis the best? Kinda. At this point in time, I think it's the best survival horror indie I've played. I still have some contenders to experience for that title, but what I've seen from beginning to end at this point in time, at the making of this video, I'd say so. And is it better than the OGs? I can't speak on Alone in the Dark, but I'll confidently say that Signalis is better than Resident Evil 9, 7, 5, 6, 3, and 0. For me, it's on par with 8, which is high praise because I thoroughly enjoyed the Ethan Winters duology and had a blast with 8. Signalis has a better story, but I don't think any of the locales are stand the test of time iconic, so I'll give the nod to Resident Evil 1 and 2. I've only played about half of Code Veronica, so I'm not fully equipped to speak on that. As far as Silent Hill is concerned, Signalis is better than 4 and on par with 1, but I like Silent Hill 2 and 3 more than it, in like every regard. Of course, all of this is a game of inches, preferences and such. If you are heavily into stories with religious undertones, you'll probably be more in step with Silent Hill. If you prefer American flavored B-horror cheese, even though it was made by Japanese people, you'll lean towards Resident Evil. And if you really like weird horror, cosmic horror, science fiction, and or Yuri, then you'll prefer Signalis. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. This is in general. Obviously, long-running series like Silent Hill and Resident Evil have entries that focus on different things and deviate from the established formula. All in all though, Signalis is a fantastic video game. I'm glad it exists, I'm glad to own it, and I'm glad to have finally played it. I thoroughly recommend it to all survival horror fans. The effort put into this game is awesome, and it's as close to a modern classic we'll get. A very memorable 6 through 12 hour journey. Just don't go forgetting your promise. Thanks for watching everybody.